Hello and welcome to The Insider, a show designed to clue you into the biggest news, events and announcements inside the video games industry, discussing with you some things you may know, some things you may not, and the glue that holds it all together is a little bit of my own opinion. My name is Paul James, thank you very much for watching, and let's get for the episode.
More and more androids show signs of deviancy. There are millions in circulation. If they become unstable, the consequences will be disastrous.
So fans of Quantic Dream, the developers of last year's Detroit Become Human, one of 2018's best games, awoke to a little New Year's surprise the other day. The company is teasing something. They're doing so via Twitter, and there's a lot of possibilities that are being discussed. In this week's episode of The Insider, we're going to break down what those possibilities are and discuss some of those that are more likely than others.
It's up to you how the story ends.
Let's start with what I consider to be the first option, but also the one that is probably the least likely of the lot, that Detroit Become Human gets some DLC. Now, lots of people are theorising that it could very well be this. I'm poo-pooing that idea somewhat because of the fact that it took such a long time for Detroit to come to be. And if you take a look at their previous projects in Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls, each of those games took a substantial amount of time to actually come to fruition. And none of them got any DLC expansions like what is being suggested here. Given how long it takes and the nature of those games and how there's so many crossing paths and combinations and permutations involved, it's incredibly unlikely that we're going to see anything more added to this game because it potentially, and quite probably, needs to link in with everything that's already gone on throughout the entire game. Now, if you've taken a look at one of those dialogue webs within that game, it's massive, it's really convoluted and really confusing, and I don't see how it could possibly work if you want to add stuff that still ties into that Detroit story. But that remains to be seen.
My name is Kara. This is where it all began. The world's forge. And it will all end.
Option 2 is a new game announcement. Now, we saw the Kara demo, which ultimately became Detroit, years and years ago. I think, if my memory serves, even before Beyond Two Souls actually came out, we saw this conceptual sort of idea that was kicking around at Quantic Dream, and it eventually became a full project. Now, I don't expect to see, hey, this is Detroit 2 or a sequel to this, or here's full new game announcement. But we could possibly see that same sort of tech demo idea, that conceptual sort of idea that David Cage is kicking around. Maybe something like that gets thrown out there and we can start to build our own ideas, and they're kind of testing the waters somewhat to see what people's interests are in this particular idea that they then might build up going forward. I feel like at this point Detroit is the only game we're going to get from Quantic Dream this generation, and then anything they do now is building towards the future. But again, we'll soon find out.
My name is Connor. I'm the android sent by CyberLife. The company has allocated a specialized model to assist investigators.
With option 3, we're starting to get into the territory that involves a lot of the news that broke last year relating to Quantic Dream. Last year, there were a lot of accusations and lawsuits and bits and pieces kind of involving that company and its workplace culture, and it seemed to cause a little bit of strain between Quantic Dream and PlayStation. PlayStation being the company that was publishing all those games. Detroit, Beyond, Heavy Rain, they'd all been exclusive to the PlayStation platform. But the fact that this sort of controversy was emerging, and this particular sort of controversy, it was something that PlayStation seemed to want to distance themselves from. They never really got involved. They never really threw their support behind David Cage and the team. Maybe they just needed to be hands-off for legal reasons, who knows? But they were very, very quiet, and with this current spate, and I say current, probably over the course of the last half decade, this trend from PlayStation where rather than bringing in new studios, they're culling or they're killing or whatever the thing may be, they're purging a lot of their teams and they're really narrowing their focus. It would be unusual for them to bring a studio into the fold, but we're going to talk about the possibility of that next.
My name is Marcus. Just like you, I was a slave.
Thank you, Marcus.
Then I chose to open my eyes, to take back my freedom, and decide who I wanted to be.
I actually think the possibility of Quantic Dream becoming a first-party PlayStation studio is more likely than any of those other possibilities. And look, there could be others that I've not considered or discussed, but those are my big four anyway. I think it is quite likely, more likely than not, that Quantic Dream actually becomes a PlayStation first-party studio, because the big thing about it, if you take a look at PlayStation's suite of franchises and the IP that are currently active, they're very diverse. It's not Xbox where we see Halo and Gears and Forza, and they're obviously looking to diversify their portfolio at the moment. But PlayStation for a long, long time has been very differentiated, and there's something for everyone. And the Quantic Dream games fit that mold. They are something different. They're not the same old shooter. They're not the same old cover shooter. They're not the same old racing game. They've got those sort of franchises, but amongst a larger pool of very different sorts of games. They fit the mold. And I feel like the conversation that went on last year about all this rubbish involving the studio, it might have actually galvanised the relationship somewhat, because that lack of apparent support to what we might have seen may not have been the case. There's email. They don't need to release these sorts of things publicly. Detroit's sales were positive. They've sold over 2 million copies. It's the fastest selling Quantic Dream game of all time. There's lots of metrics that are stacking up favourably for them. And finally, we've spoken about how in past episodes Microsoft is buying up studios at the moment, and that PlayStation appears to be just sitting on their hands. Well, maybe they're putting out a deal in front of Quantic Dream that is appealing to them and makes them want to come into the fold. We'll see how it plays out, but the ball is in PlayStation's court when it comes to that side of the industry at the moment. And I think 2019, 2020 are the years where they need to start getting active and luring studios in, because otherwise Microsoft's just going to keep snapping teams up.
My name is Kara.
My name is Connor.
My name is Marcus.
This is our story.
So that concludes this week's episode of The Insider. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking, sharing and subscribing. All those buttons are down below here. And hit that notification bell. That way you're alerted to new videos, new episodes of Patched, The Insider, Player 2 Plays, The Late Game Review, Gamer School, and a whole bunch more. We've got podcast series that you should go and check out on your various podcast apps. Dev Diary and the Player 2 podcast. There's some changes coming to the Player 2 podcast. Go and check those out. That's not far away. Visit the website, player2.net.au. We have a new host. The site is running better than ever, but go and check out our reviews, previews, opinion pieces, news, features, the Player 2 Writers Draft. There's heaps of awesome stuff there. Please go and check out the work of our authors. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/player2au. Consider kicking in a few dollars, and at the lower tiers you'll get early access to episodes of this and Patched. At the higher tiers you'll get monthly episode exclusives and the ability to join us in the Player 2 podcast. Finally, we are also on Twitch. It's been booming lately. We're putting a lot of extra time into that of late. Go and check out the work that Adam and Matt and several others are putting into the Twitch channel at the moment. Go and check that out. There's some great stuff there. And as we wrap up, you can find me at Paul James Games on Twitter. The website you'll find at Player2au. And until next time, thank you very much for watching. That is the Quantic Dream situation discussed, and hopefully we'll have some news to talk about in the coming days or weeks ahead. I'll see you next time.